So another one of my frameworks is called the friction principle, which is, a lot of the challenge that we experience is down to friction. And, that the friction principle, fundamentally what it says is you can remove it, you can change it, or you can delegate it. And delegate it these days can also mean, to AI or something like that. So we'd have a look at it and we'd say, well, what needs to happen here? What's in the way of this thing? If, for example, you're not delegating a particular area of the business and say your perfectionism is in the way or something like that, we go, right, what needs to happen for that perfectionism to get out of the way? And instead of spending 3 years doing therapy almost on that to become comfortable with it, what we often say is, well, how can we do it in a safe way for your brain?
That's it for this episode. This episode, as well as this podcast, was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help business owners elevate their business to 6, 7, and 8-figure years, all without burning out. If you're looking to grow your business, as well as get the time freedom that you are looking for, visit us at joinpurplecircle.com and see what we can do to help you and your business.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues podcast. I'm Pedro, and today I'm joined by Phil Drinkwater, who built and led a successful 7-figure business for 20 plus years before his own late ADHD diagnosis completely reframed how he understood his journey and inspired him to retrain as a coach, combining psychotherapy training with the neuroscience of neurodivergence. Phil works with scaling founders, CEOs, and senior executives at 6 to 9-figure businesses as a strategic partner, focusing on 3 interconnected areas: the individual, the business, and team, and how they are interacting. Phil redesigns team and company systems, changes work systems, and reshapes leadership roles around cognitive architecture. His rare combination of real business operating experience and deep understanding of ADHD and AUDHD makes him uniquely equipped to help brilliant, successful, neurodivergent leaders stop fighting their brain and start building around it. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Excited to talk with you from the moment I met you. Okay. Now, I'd love for us to rewind a bit and go back to your origin story because, every coach has that moment where they look at their life and say, yeah, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Right? So when was that for you, Phil?
Yeah, well, it has been a journey, to be fair. I actually trained in psychotherapy about 20 years ago, whilst my other business was kind of just in its infancy, really. And I started to think, I really like the idea of the brain and what we can get from people's brains. It's fascinating to me. And how much we can actually do if we change some things and get out of our own way. But I decided not to become a psychotherapist. Now, fast forward about 20 years. So this is about, 5 to 6 years ago now. And I started to think, it's time for me to go and do something else with my life. And I kept thinking back to the psychotherapy stuff, and I still was like, it's not for me. And then I took on my own business coach. And one of the things that happened during that journey was we did some analysis on what really suited me. And the thing that came out top was being a business coach, ironically. So yeah, I decided to kind of, retrain as a business coach. It just felt right. Everything, all of the stuff, the things that I am, it just felt right. And there was nothing else really that suited me quite as much. And as I say, I got to that point of thinking it's time to move on. And I just realized that, coaching was the thing that allowed me to use all of the bits of myself, all of the things that I'd consider strengths and all of the things that I enjoy.
Interesting. It sounds like to me that you're almost like creating that hybrid approach that you could, talk about business and psychotherapy at the same time. Right. So it's the whole Phil was into action, and parts of that you have a lot of interest in. Right. Now, I'm curious about one thing, because I know you're a CEO from past businesses. We mentioned that. We already established that. But then you moved to coaching, right? And it's a different venue. It's a different path. And in the early days, Phil, it starts usually for people in the coaching space from helping people, advice giving, testing waters to eventually become a real business, So can you walk me through how did that feel for you when you like, okay, this is actually a real thing, I have a coaching business. Is it the first invoice? Is it the first paying client? How walk us through how that feeling went for you.
Yeah, so my early days was a lot of, building my website and my search engine optimization. The first time that it started to feel real was when I got my first really good link into my website. So I was doing some link building. For those who know anything about SEO, that's when it starts to feel real. I got a link from, a major company, and suddenly I started ranking really well for London Business Coach. Because back then I was just trying to get whatever I could. I wasn't doing the ADHD stuff. Then my first customer came through the door, and I thought, there's something a bit familiar about you. I was trying to book people, and they just weren't booking. And later on, obviously, I realized that's because they weren't neurodiverse. Neurodiverse people tend to fit together better. The things that I was selling, didn't suit these other people. So the first customer that I got, that was when it did feel properly real. My first call, I was sat there thinking, well, how do I structure this? I mean, I'd been through my coach training, so I had lots of experience from that. But at the same time, you sat in front of a real customer who's paid you real money, and they are looking for an outcome. So yeah, that's when it felt really real. A number of months later, I switched into the ADHD world, and that's where suddenly my business kind of shot up, because I realized so many of the people who need help out there, and business owners, are also ADHD.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something that really sparked my interest, because in the early days, right, for coaches, as we already established, sometimes we're trying to help everyone. I mean, I did that. Okay. I'm a coach too, as we already, audience knows that. I'm not sure if I told you, but I'm a coach too. So here's the thing. Eventually we niche down, or even people that don't, right? And you did. You mentioned you weren't doing the ADHD stuff. So why did you make that change, that transition? Okay. And right now, who do you serve specifically?
Yeah. Why did I make that change? Well, it was a little random, if I'm honest. I mean, I was just learning at that time that I was ADHD, and I was thinking, I wonder whether other ADHD people are struggling here. And so again, my SEO background, I went and had a look at how many people were searching for ADHD Business Coach, and it was pretty much no one. And when you searched on the internet, there was only one other person that came up. I thought, I'll just go and do it because, I'll put a page up and see what happens. And then that's when my business suddenly went like this. Within 3 weeks, I think it was, I had 10 calls in a week, and I'd only been getting, 1 or 2 previously. It was clear that that was the most important thing. That was the thing that people really wanted from me. And yeah, the niching bit is actually really interesting, because every single coach seems to go through this. And, I've spoken to so many over the years, and I think you gravitate towards something over time, something that seems to fit how your brain works and how your nervous system is wired. A lot of people work in, wellness, and they've often had a challenge with wellness themselves. A lot of people work in, nervous system regulation. They might have a lot of challenges around nervous system regulation themselves. For me, ADHD, and I'm also almost certainly on the autistic spectrum as well. I recognized how I think I'd been fairly lucky in the past that no one had really pushed me to become someone that I wasn't. I just found my own way. And that was what led to my business success, really. So as I went through this journey, I started to realize that other ADHD people were having problems that I could clearly solve for them. I could highlight what the problems were and help them solve it. So today, my audience is, typically, 6 to 9 figures, although I do help some early entrepreneurs as well. I'm building some kind of options for, earlier entrepreneurs. But a lot of the people that I do the kind of deep transformational work with are, people at that kind of 6 to 9 figure range, particularly the kind of 6 to 8 figures, because you're in that scaling area of trying to make your business go like this. And you've got a team that you're building, and suddenly it's all confusing. And the only books out there are neurotypical. So it's literally the worst advice for our brains. And no one's written the manual yet for how to go and do that as an ADHD person. It may even be something that I end up doing because there literally isn't something out there. I also help with other kind of, CEOs, execs in corporate and those kinds of things, because they're stuck often between a rock and a hard place of, I've got people above me telling me what I need and people, who work for me telling me what they need. And I feel stuck in between, and the only thing that can give is me. And so they often get, quite exhausted. And And it's a challenge to get them out of the thinking patterns that, maybe they see from their neurotypical colleagues.
Interesting. It's almost like you're detecting the reason behind the ceiling they're hitting, right? It's usually themselves. It just so happens it could be potentially ADHD or it could not, but most of the time it is because there are some coping mechanisms they created. They have a hard time letting go and all of that, right? Now, I want to do a quick exercise with you, Phil. I want to pretend I'm your ICP, which I kind of am, right? Well, we're going to talk about that later on. But first of all, let's pretend I'm one of the 6 to 9 figures a business owner, ADHD, okay, that hit a ceiling. First of all, how would I be able to find you, okay, marketing wise?
Yeah, so phildrinkwater.com. So that's my website. From there, you can get to my LinkedIn, which would be, a good place for people to kind of have a quick look at, but my website and LinkedIn are the best places for now.
Okay. So let's say I went through your website or even your LinkedIn. I resonated with what you got out there. Phil looks cool. I want to work with them. I reach out. Okay. Let's pretend I reach out. We went through the sales process. However that looks like, we can speed up that. Let's just say there's alignment. I want to work with you. You realize you can actually help me, right? So can you walk me through how does it look like to work with you, Phil? And what are the potential outcomes I can expect out of it?
Yeah, so those are the important questions, really, aren't they? So my work's designed for ADHD people, and that means, a number of things. One of those is, I tend to write on a Miro board as we're going along. So it's not just you and me talking, because most ADHD people have a working memory, which is a little bit more goldfish. So, we forget things a lot. And we also have a lot of difficulty holding complexity because we can't hold it all in our working memory. So we have a Miro board. We put everything down on the Miro board as you're talking, I'm writing, and we're connecting things through, and you physically see those connections. And then as we go through the Miro board, it's normally almost like a journey left to right. As we go through the call, we work out where we started and how it relates to, where we ended. So the person gets that full transformation of whatever the problem is that we're dealing with in a way that their brain actually can handle. Because working memory is a serious challenge for execs and, more established founders, for all of us. But, when you've got a team and 20 people are coming at you with different things, you're already overloaded. I don't want to be another cause of that. So we spend our time sitting down and working out what's really going wrong and what's actually going wrong and what's really actually going wrong. So we're really digging into the things that are actually happening, because it might be, for example, you say, oh, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And then we go, right, okay, so what does that mean for your business? Well, I didn't deliver this piece of work. And then we go and have a look at your business, and we realize that 18 of the decisions that you could have given someone else, you've held on to because of this perfectionist nature. So it's not just this piece of work. It's everything about your entire business that's held together with sticky tape with the words perfectionist on it. And so those are the things that we're really trying to find, the things that make the huge differences in our businesses. When we can let go of something like perfectionism, suddenly a working memory which is overloaded isn't overloaded anymore, because you give away responsibility and outcome as opposed to just a task. Because that's something that typically happens particularly in the 6 to 7 figure range. People don't understand how to delegate. They've never run a business before, so they're doing their best, but they don't understand this stuff. So we're picking away at the things that are really going wrong and fixing one thing at a time.
Okay. Now, I'm going to throw you some examples of my own experience, which, to be candid, I'm not diagnosed with ADHD formally, okay? But I want to talk about me, and then I'm going to ask you some questions so people can detect if they have it or not in their business specifically. Like they're thinking, oh, do I got it? Or maybe can Phil help me? How could I notice I do have it, okay? So first, for example, myself, okay? I forget things a lot. I have multiple glasses in my house, like 4 to 5 sometimes. That's one. I work with multiple checklists, just make sure I have it and I didn't forget things. That's 2. 3, I was sitting in front of class all my entire life. I told myself I was sitting there because I didn't want to do homework, but honestly, I just couldn't concentrate when I was in the back. That's number 3. Number 4, I cannot talk with my wife while the TV is on. I focused on the TV. I cannot have something distracting me. Strike number 4. Okay. Now, my question to you is, Phil, imagine I'm still your ICP and I'm in the fence because I'm not sure if you can help me. I'm not sure if I do have it, right? What would you say, for example, are people that were clients that you onboarded and they realized they had it? Some good examples. And if I'm on the fence, what would you say to me? Check this out. Maybe you're doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, the first thing is, because I'm ADHD as well, I don't remember your list. Fortunately, as you were going through each one of them, I was giving each one of them a tick or a cross. So I remember you got 4 ticks. I mean, we've got to laugh about this stuff.
Yes.
I'm ADHD as well. I'm not superhuman. I haven't suddenly fixed my brain. The whole point is that we can't. We just got to work with it. So that was one of my little traits. I was like, right, I'll go through. I know I'll forget this list. I'll go and tick them as I'm going through. So you got 4 ticks on those. Okay. So first off, I can't diagnose people officially, and I'm not qualified to diagnose people. I have spoken to a lot of ADHD people though, and I know most of the traits. There's even some physical traits in some people that you can kind of see, and also sometimes how they hold themselves, how they behave. Same with people who are autistic as well. You'll start to spot the little traits, the behavioral and physical traits. For many of my customers, the number one thing that they come to me saying is, I'm overwhelmed. Now, I'm not saying that neurotypical people can't become overwhelmed, but it's much less likely because what they tend to do is they work through things in a normal fashion. So they'll just go, here's the start, and I'll just go like that. Whereas an ADHD person goes, here's the start, don't want to do that. I'll skip to number 4. I've just had another thought about number 3. So, and that's now, where was I? Was I at number? No. Oh, hang on a second. Something else has just happened. And, a team member's come back to me and all of these problems are because you're ADHD. The reason that the team member came back to you is probably because you're delegating in an ADHD fashion, because you're not really delegating in the right way and you're not very organized and stuff. And so number 5 happened because you were doing all of those things whilst you were still trying to work out which one you were dealing with previously. So the number one thing that people really come to me with is overwhelm. The other one that people come to me with very regularly is some level of burnout. And now people who with some autism tend to experience a higher level of burnout than people with ADHD alone, but both experience, a level of burnout and exhaustion. And so those are 2 things that I would say are fairly good indicators. The company is messy and a bit confused. No one quite knows what they're supposed to be doing. The other one that obviously happens pretty much right throughout is knowing what's important, but still not doing it. People have literally sat in front of me and said, if I go and make all of these calls, I'll double my turnover, and this was someone that was doing 50 million a year. So, you're saying that this is big stake stuff. If I go and make these 20 calls every day, that's going to double my turnover. And yeah, it was still a real challenge. So these things that are important and that we know are important, we still tend to, procrastinate them because our brains aren't activated by important, they're activated by interest or external dependency. Does that answer the question, Wolf?
It does. It does. I forget No, I'm kidding. No, it does.
Well, if you remember half of that, you're doing very well.
Right. No, I do have a curveball for you, okay? Really interested about your answer about this, okay? Here's the thing. You're talking about overwhelming, right? People that feel overwhelmed and all that. And burnout too. And I see a lot of coaches out there, Phil, that they burn out themselves while advocating against it. Right. So how do they do that? They're wearing all the hats in the coaching space. They're the business development, they're the sales guy, they're the marketer, they have to do the coaching itself. So how do you think about capacity so you don't stretch yourself too thin?
Yeah. So I actually have a framework called the RAG framework, which is red, amber, green. And we tend to classify people's tasks into red, amber, or green. Tasks and projects. The things that are red, we automatically know are draining, but we still go forwards and do them because we think no one else is going to do them or could do them as well as us. There's the perfectionism. And so we hold ourselves to this stuff. And it actually creates a ceiling in the business because, we can't manage all of the reds as well as the ambers and the greens. So capacity is one of the most important conversations that I have with every founder or coach, because, coaches come to me as well. So capacity is an important thing. Now, I only coach on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays specifically for this reason. I find that, coaching calls sometimes can be quite tiring, not always, but sometimes they can be. And, it's better for me to, have a break. Some people, when they're founders, for example, might have a day that they have a meetings day, and that exhausts them. Some people, it excites them and they love it. Some people, it exhausts them. So we've got to have a look at, the particular person, the particular week, and get some idea of what it is that's really going on, and design a week that suits them. But most importantly, get rid of the things that are draining. A lot of founders end up in. So I design business as like or define business as like vision and strategy up here, in the middle, ops and management, down here, tasks and projects and things that you're supposed to be doing. This ops layer in the middle is where most of our red tasks lie. So when you're a coach, not only are you dealing with all of the task stuff, as in having the calls, which can be red tasks because we're taking on other people's, challenges and helping them solve them. We're also dealing with the structure of the company and everything that's going on around it. And as you say, all of the sales and stuff, but we're having to organize everything and remember everything. And we don't always have systems in place for those kinds of things. And that can be a real challenge.
It's very interesting because I have a problem delegating, right? And not just delegating the workspace. Let's talk about my kids, right? I have 2 boys. Because you mentioned something that really resonates with me, which is the curiosity, the interest about stuff. And when that's kind of dialed in, we kind of lose the spark. And when we lose the spark, we just browse through it, right? We're like, I already handled it. I don't care about this anymore. And when we're explaining to someone, we kind of don't do it in a proper way, at least myself, right? I just push through it. And that's hence comes the problem with delegating sometimes, right? Now, we mentioned what, right? You explained me that you have the green, the amber, and the red light. Right? Now let's talk about a little bit on the how. So let's pretend I was dealing with some stuff where in the onboarding I was onboarded, all that. You detected I have a problem with delegating. Let's put it like that. You detected I have not just delegating, but I have a red light because I tend to move on doing stuff that are low value tasks, right? Which is a classic for the founders, the unbillable hours. They're wasting their time, then should be doing something else. Now, can you walk me through an example top of your head how you would be able to solve that or help me solving that?
Sure, yeah. And this is the work that I really do. So another one of my frameworks is called the friction principle, which is, a lot of the challenge that we experience is down to friction. And, that the friction principle, fundamentally what it says is you can remove it, you can change it, or you can delegate it. And delegate it these days can also mean, to AI or something like that. So we'd have a look at it and we'd say, well, what needs to happen here? What's in the way of this thing? If, for example, you're not delegating a particular area of the business and say your perfectionism is in the way or something like that, we go, right, what needs to happen for that perfectionism to get out of the way? And instead of spending 3 years doing therapy almost on that to become comfortable with it, what we often say is, well, how can we do it in a safe way for your brain? So it's more of a coaching based approach than a therapy based approach. So I would kind of say, right, so you're uncomfortable with delegating. So let's create a little sandbox for your team to go and play in. But we'll make sure mistakes don't get out of the sandbox for now. Chefs talk about it like this. They say, don't let mistakes get out of the kitchen. They stay in the kitchen. So if you're worried about, your team messing up and that causing, problems later on with, your actual customers, then we say, right, let's make sure that the problems can't get outside of there first. And then we start to slowly say, well, how can we build confidence in that? So maybe you check in with the team twice a week at first, and you spot check 10 things that happen. Well, maybe a week later, you only do it once in the week and you spot check half the amount of things that happen, and whatever pace is right for you. But the goal is that you're building safety around delegation, because perfectionism is really there as to protect you against failure, whether that's failure to your pride or failure to your business. We can have a look at those kind of things, but fundamentally we want to build a business that's safe for you to operate. So the question is, what's the thing that's in the way of that happening? And that gives us the solution. In this case, it might be something like pacing.
Interesting. Appreciate the insight. Now, I want to shift gears for a second. Okay, Phil, I want to talk a bit about future. So looking ahead, where do you see the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring, or is there a next step you're excited about?
Yeah, so right now the thing's exciting me as I'm going back to some of my old days when I used to be a programmer, and I'm working with Claude, the AI model, to go and do kind of coding and stuff for me. So I'm building systems for my business. So I built a full event management system with Claude, which allows people to book events with me, multi-day events. They can pay for them, all of that kind of stuff. And that's my own system, so it works how I want it to. Yeah, so I'm building, lots of kind of systems and those kind of things to help me. One of the other things I'm going to build is a system to manage reminders for my customers for their calls, to book their calls, because I don't do you have to have this slot. I think a lot of coaches do, a slot for a particular customer. I don't do work like that because people can't always guarantee that they can get to that slot. So I work a little differently. So I'm going to build a system to go and deal with that. So that's quite exciting. And my brain loves those kind of things. So, it's enjoying that stuff. Probably should be focusing on some other things, but I like to have a bit of a mix. And at least I'm building assets that the business can use. Long term, what's happening? So I'm going to move more into programs in the medium term, because I'm very conscious that, there's only one of me, and I'm trying to, service an amount of customers which is, probably too large, to be honest. And also, that not everyone can afford, to hire me, one-to-one. And that's fine. But that doesn't mean that I can't go and help them. So I think that's my, one of my next steps. Now, will I start hiring people to help me with those things? Potentially. I already have a small team though. So I have a kind of a fractional COO/task manager person who I work with directly to help me on, maintaining my own cadence. And I have 2 other people who help me with marketing and kind of PR and those sorts of things. So I'm already kind of in that phase. It's that, you've got to do the things that you say are right? Otherwise it would be ridiculous. If I sat here and said, I don't delegate, but you should, then that's not going to work for people. So yeah, I've already given away some of the things that, are not great for my brain.
Okay. Got to practice what you preach, right, Phil?
You do? That was the phrase that I was trying and failing to remember.
Okay. Now, you're building something, next chapter, future, all that sounds exciting. And whenever we're doing that, always something that we're refining in the present. So what are you currently trying to improve or tighten up in your business right now?
I mean, systems is definitely one of them, but I'm doing a new website, and it should be launched literally probably later today. And hopefully that will improve my conversion rates on my website, because that's a very important thing. It's designed to be very ADHD friendly. So it's designed around an ADHD brain. So it's not just lots of text. It's a lot more engaging than that, which is hopefully going to be beneficial for my audience. So that's what I'm kind of focusing on right now. Outside of that, I'm looking to build some more kind of channels, some marketing channels and different ways of getting in touch with people. I've probably focused on SEO for sort of too long, really. I could have done other things in the meantime. So I'm moving into, other types of marketing, and I've got some really interesting plans for how to do that in a different way, in a way that suits my brain and allows me to take advantage of, who I am.
Okay, you're gonna have to paint me the picture of what does it really look like, a website designed for ADHD users, because I'm like trying to wrap my head around it. So please do.
I mean, you can welcome to go and have a look later, but yes, I'll give you a little bit of something. So the first thing is, most of my landing pages, they start with like a bit of an interactive quiz. So you tick things and it counts up how many of those things you've ticked. A little bit later on down the page, there's an actual animation. So a little bit of it shows you something that normally goes on. So you hit play and you see the kind of one thing you're supposed to be doing. That's from the book, The One Thing, obviously, that so many people have talked about. And then it layers over all of these other things, which are the distractions. So it's making the point, without you having to read loads of words, it's making the point that all of this distraction comes at you. Whereas, when you're working with me, you press the next button and it takes all of the distraction away. Because what I do is I help you hold to the things that are most important for you. And the rest of the page's got little bits of animation and stuff like that. I'll probably improve it as well over time and do more. Maybe I'll bake Space Invaders into it for some reason.
Oh my God, you just gave me an aha moment. Okay. Here's the kicker. There are games out there called Sandbox. They're like are role-playing games and all that. I've never could play them because they get I feel so overwhelmed of not being cornered into doing A to B. I'm like, oh my God, there are so many options. I can't even deal with it. And when you mentioned the website, I feel like you're giving me direction to move from point A to B. And that makes so much sense to me, because I was thinking about this game I played a while ago. And the reason it clicked for me is because I didn't have a lot. I mean, I have one obstacle at a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, gaming is really common for ADHD people, but many of us prefer arcade style games as opposed to things that are deeper, because our working memories can't always hold the amount of information. And when I play a game which has got complicated controls, if it's really complicated with the controller, my brain can't handle it all, and I immediately forget how to go and put my sword or something like that, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I prefer games that are much simpler and have a simpler interface.
My God, Phil. My God, that's me, right? I love playing role-playing games with my buddies in school, right? School, college years and all that. But that was it was like one dungeon master and I have this path to follow. So story-wise, that worked. And then years later, a friend of me tells me, hey man, you should try this game called The Witcher, right? The Witcher 3. And I tried it multiple times because they're hyped about it. But I was like, okay, how do I how do I do this? Oh my God, this is so much work. And now I have to click on this and that. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot handle this. And when you mentioned the sword, I was like, that's why I don't like it.
Wow.
This is hilarious.
Yeah. And games that can get 5 stars, same with films, actually. Films are the same thing. If it doesn't attach to something that we enjoy, and if it's a very confused plot or something like that, our brains won't handle that. It's literally a working memory limitation. It's just how we are compared to neurotypical people. Just one thing to work around in your life and in your business. There's none of this that can't be solved, is the point. What we can't do is take your brain out and put another one in. So we just have to work with business in a different way. But so many people come to me thinking that they really need a new brain effectively. It's like, how do I manage to focus on all of these things? That's the wrong question. The question is, why are you even trying to? If you're still doing this thing, the question is, why are you still doing it? So yeah, we work in a different way.
I think part of it, at least in my end, it was I felt a little bit of guilt because there were people that could manage multiple conversations, multiple tasks, and they're stereo and I'm mono. I couldn't navigate that, and I always felt like I should try harder. I should put more effort, but that's just a limitation, and having to accept that I just can't handle it. It's just overwhelming for me, at least. I'm not sure if that makes sense with what you said, but I feel like it.
Yeah, and the should word. So should is a word that I always pay attention to as a coach, because should is an external expectation. So it's not something you want; it's something that that you believe is expected of you. And should doesn't do anything for us at all. It's it doesn't give you anything. I hear a lot of people, they'll come to me and they say, "Oh, I need to become more consistent," or "I need to become, better at this," or whatever it is. And I say to them, well, that's a desire without a plan. Where's the plan? What are we going to do with that phrase? It's just, there's no plan attached to it. So the plan is actually to let go of those things, particularly when you're, at the 6 to, 7-figure range and you're building and you're starting to, you've got some income, so you can actually start to afford, this kind of stuff. Because people don't give themselves the support they need. They give the business support it needs and they expect themselves to just continue to work with personal heroics. Well, it doesn't work. You become the ceiling and the bottleneck to the business simply because you won't give yourself the support that you need. Financially, that might be one of the things that hold you back, but often it's more this embarrassment and shame of well, I should be able to do better here. It's no, that's not going to get you anywhere. That won't fix your business.
Right. I love that, man. Now, if someone listening wants to connect with you, Phil, or follow your work, and we're going to have all the links in the description, but what's the best way to find you and connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, phildrinkwater.com. I may end up at some point doing a podcast of my own. I'm not sure yet. in discussion. And because I think, there's so much of this stuff that people never really talk about or think about. And that'll be on probably YouTube and on all the kind of major platforms. LinkedIn is the most obvious one to kind of keep an eye on, where I'm up to, just connect up on LinkedIn, and it'll be good to have conversations on that.
Okay. I feel the need to highlight parts of this chat today. Okay. So bear with me. First of all, the origin story, how you were mentioning what we can get to people's brains, right? And how that was fascinating to you. And eventually you got a hybrid approach with the psychotherapy aligned with the business side. That is pretty cool to watch. And I completely get that. I need things to be not at just challenging, but they have to be fun, but also challenging. So that's one of the reasons I really like to work whenever I like to be at a certain place or doing certain things, right? It's even hard to hold myself back because I really enjoy, so there's that.
Yeah.
The other part when you mentioned niching, and not just because you did it, but because you kind of went through a part which is like counterintelligence. People are not searching for ADHD coaches, right? And it just so happens you can help them with that. So it's not just wishful thinking. It has some process behind it, right? You did some research, you did your homework. So kudos to you on that too. Pretty cool to watch. And last but not least, I would say when you mention even if they can't pay the one-on-one, it doesn't mean you cannot help them. Right. And that really hits home too, because I'm a career coach here in Brazil. And sometimes people that are laid off, they have a hard time with the budget side, so 9 out of 10 calls, they don't have the budget, but it doesn't mean I cannot help them. Right. There are certain ways, even if we're talking about resources, if we're talking a different plan, like not just rejecting people because they don't have the money, because I think that's part of the mission, at least for me, but it sounds like for you too. Right. So Phil, this is just my long-winded way of saying that I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you being here and sharing so openly today, okay? It was great having you on.
Yeah, thank you. It was really good to get a chance to talk about something that, I am exceptionally passionate about.
That's it for this episode. This episode, as well as this podcast, was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help business owners elevate their business to 6, 7, and 8-figure years, all without burning out. If you're looking to grow your business, as well as get the time freedom that you are looking for, visit us at joinpurplecircle.com and see what we can do to help you and your business.